She showed up every day on time, kept her head down, and worked harder than anyone else in the office. Emma wasn't flashy, didn't speak much, and wore the same pair of worn-out shoes for years. To her co-workers, she was just the quiet woman from accounting. Simple, ordinary, forgettable. What they didn't know was that behind her modest life was a secret that could change everything. But none of that mattered to them. They mocked her behind her back, ignored her in meetings, and laughed when she brought homemade lunch in an old plastic container. Some even went as far as throwing files on her desk without a word, treating her like she was invisible. Emma took it all in silence, until the day things went too far. That morning, something shifted. A senior manager publicly embarrassed her for a minor mistake in front of the whole team. The room fell silent, but no one spoke up for her. Eyes lowered, she gathered her things, holding back tears. Just then, the office door opened, and in walked a man none of them recognized. Dressed in a sharp-tailored suit, confidence in every step, he looked around with a calm, commanding presence. No one knew who he was, but Emma did. Her heart skipped a beat. Because this wasn't just anyone, this was her husband. And not just any husband. He was the billionaire CEO of the entire company's parent corporation. The silence in the office turned into stunned whispers as he walked over to Emma, placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and said just one sentence that would turn the entire office upside down. What he said, and what happened next, left everyone speechless, and none of them would ever look at Emma the same way again. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning each face slowly, as if memorizing every single one. Then, in a calm voice that cut through the silence, he said, "Everyone in this room, step into the conference area." Now, no one dared to move at first, but the authority in his tone left no room for argument. Chairs scraped the floor, papers were left half-sorted, and people hurried to obey, glancing nervously at each other. Emma stood still, unsure of what was happening, but her husband gave her a reassuring nod. "Stay here," he said gently. "You've done enough today." What no one at the office knew was that Emma had chosen to live a quiet, low-key life for a reason. She never bragged, never let on who she was married to, and certainly never used his name to get special treatment. She believed in earning her place. But that belief had come at a cost. For months, she'd been enduring subtle jabs, rude remarks, and open disrespect. She never said a word about it, thinking she could handle it. But what happened that morning was the final straw. Her husband, Daniel Lawson, wasn't just a billionaire. He was one of the most influential figures in the corporate world. But beyond the money and power, he was a man deeply protective of the woman he loved. And once he found out how she was treated, how people looked down on her just because she chose to be humble, something in him snapped. In the conference room, murmurs broke out. Phones buzzed silently. People wondered who this man really was. Why was he defending Emma? Why did he walk in like he owned the place? Because, as they were about to find out, he actually did. But he wasn't done yet. Not even close. Inside the conference room, the air was heavy. People sat stiffly, eyes flicking to the door every few seconds, whispering guesses about who the man was. A few started connecting dots. Emma's last name, Lawson, the same as the tech mogul rumored to be acquiring the company. But none of them had ever imagined that quiet Emma from accounting could be married to *that* Lawson. Some felt guilty. Others felt scared. Daniel stepped in after a few moments, his calm gaze sweeping over the room again. "Let's get one thing clear," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've been watching this company for a while now. Not just the numbers, but the culture, the leadership, the way people are treated." He paused. "And today gave me all the confirmation I needed." Meanwhile, back at her desk, Emma sat in silence, staring at the small photo of her and Daniel that she kept hidden in a drawer. She hadn't wanted special treatment. She just wanted to do good, honest work. She begged Daniel not to interfere, but deep down, part of her was relieved. The quiet strength she'd held onto was cracking, and she didn't know how much more she could take. In the conference room, Daniel continued, "We talk about values, about integrity, about teamwork, but clearly, some people here forgot what those words mean." The managers looked pale. One of them, Mark, who had humiliated Emma earlier, wiped sweat from his forehead. He was already mentally updating his resume. Outside the room, whispers started spreading through the office. Who else would be exposed? Was this just about Emma, or was Daniel planning a complete shakeup? No one knew for sure. But what everyone did know, without a doubt, was that nothing in the office would ever be the same again. The room was dead silent as Daniel paced slowly in front of the long conference table. No one dared to look away. Every word he spoke felt heavier than the last. "This isn't just about how my wife was treated," he said, pausing to glance at the faces frozen in fear. "It's about the kind of company we've allowed this to become. A place where arrogance overshadows respect, where kindness is mistaken for weakness." Whispers turned into pin-drop silence. Mark, the manager who'd embarrassed Emma, looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Others exchanged nervous glances, realizing this wasn't just a warning, it was the beginning of something much bigger. Daniel's reputation for swift decisions and zero tolerance for toxic culture was well known in the business world, and now they were watching that reputation come to life right in front of them. Meanwhile, Emma sat outside, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her desk. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted to be seen, to be treated like a human being, not overlooked because she chose to live simply. Her heart pounded. She knew Daniel well enough to sense what was coming, but even she wasn't sure how far he'd go. Inside, Daniel pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. "This is a list of names," he said. "People who've either contributed to the problem or stood by in silence and let it happen." Gasps echoed around the room. No one had expected it to go this far. Phones buzzed again, this time with notifications from the head office. Whispers of layoffs, audits, and restructuring were spreading like wildfire. And just as Daniel opened the folder, the door creaked. Emma stepped in. Everyone turned. The room held its breath. Emma stood at the doorway, her eyes scanning the room full of people who suddenly looked so small, so different from how they carried themselves just hours ago. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't have to. Her presence alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. Even Daniel, mid-sentence, paused when he saw her. "I asked you to stay outside," he said softly, concern in his eyes. But Emma shook her head, stepping forward. "No," she replied. "They need to hear it from me." The team watched in stunned silence as Emma walked slowly to the front of the room, standing beside Daniel. "I know many of you think I'm just some quiet woman who didn't belong here," she said. "You assumed my clothes meant I had no worth, that my silence meant I had no voice. But let me tell you something, you were wrong." Murmurs started to stir again, but Emma's next words silenced them all. This wasn't just a test of character. This entire office was part of a deeper evaluation, Emma said, her voice clear and steady. Daniel didn't just show up today by chance. For months, he's been watching this company closely, but not as a CEO. As a husband, hearing the things I never wanted to tell him, until it got too hard to keep quiet. Eyes widened around the room. People looked at one another, realizing every offhand comment, every dismissive tone, had been silently witnessed by the one person who had the power to change everything. Daniel stepped forward again, holding up the folder. "This list, it's not just for restructuring," he said. "It's for a complete leadership overhaul. And before you panic, some of you are staying. The ones who treated others with respect, who worked with integrity regardless of status." Tension finally snapped. A few people sighed in relief. Others sat frozen pale. Mark stood up, stuttering, I didn't know who she was. If I had." "That's the problem," Emma interrupted, eyes locked on his. "You shouldn't have needed to." A heavy silence followed, and then Daniel made the announcement no one saw coming. "Starting today, Emma will be taking on the role of Director of Culture and Operations. She'll be leading the internal reset of this company from the inside out. The room exploded with disbelief. Some clapped. Some looked horrified. But before anyone could fully react, Emma added one last twist. And for those wondering, this company was never Daniel's alone. I've been co-owner from the beginning. The shock rippled through the room like a wave. The simple woman they ignored was not only their new leader. She had always been the silent force behind it all, and they never saw her coming. The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't out of fear, it was pure shock. Emma, the quiet woman in worn-out shoes, had just flipped everything upside down. She looked around the room at the same faces that once overlooked her and gave a small, calm smile. From now on, she said, this workplace will be built on kindness, respect, and accountability. If you can't live by that, you won't have a place here. Some employees lowered their heads, ashamed. Others, especially the ones who had treated her with decency, even when she was just Emma from accounting, felt hope rise in their chests. The truth had shaken the company to its core, but it had also revealed who people really were when they thought no one important was watching. Over the following weeks, the office transformed. Toxic leadership was replaced, and a new team culture began to grow. Emma didn't change overnight. She still wore simple clothes and brought homemade lunch, but her presence carried new weight. Employees now greeted her with genuine respect, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Daniel quietly stepped back into his role at the top, letting Emma take the lead in reshaping the company's values. Together, they built something better, not just a stronger business, but a workplace where no one would be treated the way Emma once was. The story of the simple woman spread beyond the office walls, sparking conversations across industries. It reminded people everywhere that humility is not weakness, that real power often comes in quiet forms, and that every person, no matter how they appear, deserves dignity. And in the end, Emma didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. She just needed to be seen, and now finally she was.